On a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this product to a friend or colleague? That is the classic Net Promoter Score or NPS question that I'm sure all of you have seen on surveys. But what do companies do with that data? Or maybe a better question to ask is what they should be doing with that data. Well, stay tuned because I'm about to sit down with a company that took NPS to the next level. They implemented something called NPS 3.0, and I can't wait to sit down with them to learn more. Joining me today on the program is Brad Rennick. He's the Chief Customer Officer at FinThrive. Also, Jeffrey Becker, Vice President of Portfolio Marketing at FinThrive, and Alan Gonsenhauser, Founder and CEO of Demand Revenue. Let's get to it. Jeff, Brad, Alan, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Colin. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting us.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. But before we dive into the topic at hand, which is NPS 3.0, Jeff, can you tell me a little bit about you and your role?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jeff Becker. I'm the Vice President of Portfolio Marketing at FinThrive. And what that means in context to customer experience is that I work with a cross-functional team to support our class improvement initiatives for our overall class score improvements and really help our organization distill that information into more actionable, tangible steps that we can take to deliver better outcomes, build better products, and just create a better overall experience for our customers.
Brad, your turn, but also, can you share a little bit about FinThrive?
Sure. So Brad Rennick, Chief Customer Officer for FinThrive, and ultimately responsible for the majority of post-sales activity from delivery, support, engagement. But I'd like to think the more important role is influencing the organization to be a customer-centric organization. It's not a department. It's from before we sell to when we renew and help our customers for the life of our relationships. So it's something I really appreciate doing and working cross-functionally. So with FinThrive, so I had joined Q4 of 21, and it was a former company name that our PE sponsor had invested in, and then brought a number of leaders and new folks in, and then we went on to acquire competitive solutions and grew exponentially very quickly. So FinThrive is really more a roll-up of a number of point solutions, and we've evolved into an integrated platform from an end-to-end revenue cycle perspective.
All right, Alan, over to you. Your turn. Give us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about Demand Revenue.
Sure. Well, I've been a chief marketing officer 10 times and also a P&L general manager. And then I worked for a company called Serious Decisions that was acquired by Forrester. And in my 6 years there, I mentored, advised, and coached over 130 chief marketing officers. Forrester acquired us. I stayed on a couple of years, then I left. I started Demand Revenue about 3.5 years ago. And what I do a few things. So I mentor, advise, and coach chief marketing officers and heads of marketing. I've been an interim CMO 3 times in the past 3 years. And I also help CMOs and chief customer officers with projects. And I help private equity and their portfolio companies with due diligence and help them grow their companies.
I'm excited to sit down with you. As I mentioned, I understand that FinThrive has implemented something called NPS 3.0. So can you tell me what that is and how that is different from the NPS that a lot of marketers know and love?
We probably have different perspectives, Jeff. Do you want to take it from a marketing lens and I'll take it from a customer lens?
Sure. So obviously it's critical to any marketing organization that you can lean on the outcomes that your customers are realizing, the experiences that they're realizing. Traditional NPS is always a great tool. It's been around for decades really at taking a pulse on what the overall satisfaction of your customer is. But what we wanted was to go beyond that. We really wanted to take the information that we were gleaning from a traditional NPS program and take action on it so that we could drive perpetual improvement within our customer base from an outcomes standpoint, a satisfaction standpoint. So NPS 3.0 brings you one step further. You go through each and every comment that you receive on your NPS survey and you ask yourself, can I fix this problem for this customer right now? And if you can, you do. And then the next thing that you do is you tag every one of those comments and you say, is this an implementation problem? Is this a problem with the product? Is this a problem with just outcomes not being realized? And once you start to get your hands around the themes or the topics that are driving dissatisfaction, you implement sweeping process improvement initiatives so that it's sort of like a rising tide lifts all boats and you can affect change for everyone. From a marketing standpoint, that's highly effective and impactful because we want to brag about our NPS scores, and analyst firms like Class Research are reporting out publicly very similar things. And so we want to drive improvement to those class scores and the comments that we see in class. And so for us, NPS 3.0 really was the vehicle to get us not just a measure, but a process that will allow us to improve those measures.
Yeah, very well said. I'll give more of a philosophical or our philosophy perspective on it. I've been in NPS 15 years. You know, I've seen so many different iterations of it. I think a lot of companies, when it's, you know, they'll take it as a marker, and when it's really good, it's celebrated. When it's low, it's not talked about, and or the action items aren't well defined to what to do, whether it's high or low. Right? I mean, there's opportunity when it's high, and there's opportunity for correction if it's trending low. What I think we did really well here is, and Jeff outlined the tactical response we have from it. I always say NPS is a indicator. It's not the indicator, but it's a very important one at that moment in time. And so, you know, we act swiftly, you know, at that moment in time. It's not you know, because we have in our industry a favorable, pretty high NPS from, you know, when you look across, but that doesn't mean there still aren't passives or detractors, right? And they're responding, and they're giving us such valuable data that you just can't get anywhere else. But the goal is to close the loop and let them know they've been heard, you know, and they see actions and follow up. And then my favorite part of NPS really 3.0 isn't what's your NPS, it's what was your NPS from that one professional that gave it to you 6 months ago, and now what is it today? Like, did you better and improve that one person's response, not a collective data?
Yeah, so it sounds like NPS 3.0 is not very different from the end user's perspective, in the sense I'm still giving you that feedback, but it sounds like there's this huge process that's behind the scenes that happens after I give you that response. It's no longer just sort of amalgamated into a big score that's reported every quarter. It sounds like you guys are doing something right away with that feedback based on some processes you've implemented.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the feedback, when a customer takes time to give you meaningful, thought out response, then you owe it to them to give them, you know, a meaningful response to that. And I think a lot of companies just don't, and which means people stop responding. Well, that means you've lost completely, right? So the goal is here, engage, and you know, try and find a mutual action plan that would make them feel better, and then execute on it, and then it should feed a future NPS growth.
So let me ask both of you, what operational or internal benefits did you realize having gone through the implementation of NPS 3.0?
From a marketing standpoint, we have watched our class scores and our class rankings really climb steadily across all of our products. It's a process, so it applies equally to each of our products. We have a portfolio of 9 class-rated products, and of course, we want to see all of them trending in the right direction. And so through NPS 3.0, we have had the ability to drive that score improvement across the board for our portfolio. And so we've been really excited to see that. So it's had a meaningful impact on not just our customers' experience, but also who we show up as a competitor in the market. And so that's been really meaningful and impactful for our organization.
Yeah, and it's also a very strong affirmation when we look at other data points, right? So when I say it's a marker, if we had other data points that weren't trending with NPS, that'd be a problem, right? So Jeff mentioned class, and we've built an entire voice of customer program out with a number of measures that are real-time utilization, product consumption measures, to sentiment, to a proprietary health score and a customer success platform. It all feeds in, and NPS is a very heavily weighted contributor to those scores as well.
So Alan, it's pretty clear to me that FinThrive really benefited from NPS 3.0. But if we go back to the beginning, how did you know that it was going to be the right approach for FinThrive?
Sure. Well, I was interim CMO at FinThrive for 6 months, and then when they hired Cheryl Alden, the chief marketing officer full-time, I was her mentor, coach, and advisor for another 14 months. And I knew from that experience that they had some customer experience issues, especially with a lot of M&A they were doing and integrating these companies. And I asked some questions about how are you looking at customer satisfaction? And what I heard was, well, we do NPS, but I felt they were just focused on the number, but not what they were doing to improve the number, to continuously improve. So I knew that they had an issue that I could help them with, as I've helped other companies with.
How often and at what points in the customer journey do you solicit this feedback? I mean, it sounds like it's pretty frequent, but how frequent is it on a per customer basis?
It's actually not as frequent maybe as it sounds, Colin. We actually have 3 scheduled events throughout the year. And then we measure against all respondents each time. We have new respondents, same respondents. So we do it 3 times a year, gives us adequate time to have the capacity to properly respond. And it also keeps us from kind of falling, in a lot of software companies will fall into like NPS by product. This isn't by product, right? That's a product sat score. That's a separate collection. This is true sentiment. And then something I've seen that's been done well at FinThrive is with the follow-up, whether it's customer success managers or support solution managers or sellers, they may be talking to someone that gave us a passive or just not a promoter NPS, but that actual user may have a 100 NPS across the hall because our customers are so big, right? So it allows us to kind of get some value realization prep for those conversations too. Not just, hey, let's listen to it's like, hey, by the way, here's everything we're doing for you. You may not know because it's not in your org, and we want you to have the same experience that your colleague across the halls have.
So guys, can you tell me what the customers' reactions have been when you've fed back to them the changes that you've made based on how they've scored you?
Yeah, I actually was probably halfway through. We implemented a new process, at least when it comes to my organization and myself. One data point that I wish we had introduced sooner. So if your listeners, something to consider. But we now have automated touch points where if you're a passive or a detractor, they get a letter from me, and they can self-schedule a meeting with me directly to talk about it. That's on top of their customer success manager also reaching out to them, but we're letting them know, like, we're listening. And then, I've discovered 9 times out of 10, even if we say detractor or passive, it's not really that much detractor or passive, and which is great. We're not going into a dumpster fire. They're just like, oh, I thought 7 was pretty good, right? And then we tell them our methodology. They're like, oh, if that's the case. Or we simply say, we're going to get that 7, to a 9. That's our goal. And what would do that? And ask the customer, what would do that, in 4 or 5 months when you get the survey again, and try and get that action item out like immediately. And then when that next survey comes, we look at them all and we go, did we win that customer over or not?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that there's a few ways that you can look at how the customers are perceiving this effort, but the most quantifiable is just that before and after snapshot of what was their NPS 6 months ago, what is their NPS today. You can look at that individually, and then you can even aggregate that and look at that across all of your multi-respondent survey takers. And what you can see is continued improvement among those multi-touch, because, and this is something that Alan actually brought to the organization, but the concept of immediately actioning everything that can be taken action on. And then Brad's team even took that one step further and said, even on things that we can't immediately action, we want a conversation with our chief customer officer to happen. We want them to feel heard and to know that they have a channel directly to the executive layer in this organization so that they can articulate the problems that they're experiencing. From my team, as I was saying, we do our product innovation councils and our FinThrive advisory board. We also run all of our focus groups. And I think that what you'll find when you're building with your customers rather than building internally and then releasing to your customers is that there's a lot of positive sentiment just around the improvement. So it's okay if it's not perfect on day one. There is a lot of appreciation for that transparency and that closed loop experience, just telling them where we are, what we're doing, how we think it's going to improve, getting their feedback on our initiatives plans. So when we were talking about that, we look through all of those NPS scores and we pull out common themes. We bring those themes back to the customers through those focus groups and through those innovation councils, and we brainstorm on them together. And we roll out programs and initiatives that the customers helped us design, and so they are expecting it when they see it. And that does get back to us. They appreciate the ongoing perpetual improvement that we're building here.
Yeah, and something just to add that I don't think many talk about when you talk about NPS, you're always thinking about how do you get your passes or detractors up, right? But it's also what are you doing with your promoters, and what are you learning from them? There's so many they're spending time saying why we're important to them, the value we're providing to them. And that is invaluable to our sellers, so they're equally following up and saying, hey, thank you for your response. Thank you for being a fan. We read this, and that makes them feel good. And it's like, hey, I'm going to keep doing this, right? They're listening, they're paying attention. And, so it's not, it's keeping your promoters, right? And making sure you're not forgetting them just to constantly try and drive up the others. So.
Why has FinThrive put such a focus on customer and voice of the customer and improvement? I mean, just hearing and listening to you, you guys have put so much effort and focus on this. It's very encouraging, but why? What was that driving force for FinThrive to do this?
Yeah, I'll probably start, Jeff, with this one from the executive director from our PE sponsor early on with our legacy organizations. It was clear that we were very product-y, right? And a lot of tech companies become that. And we're a number of, former acquisitions rolled into new companies and then new cos, and now we're a much bigger new co, right? And so when you have multiple product experiences going on in the same customer, it was clear that they weren't even, and we wanted to get consistency, and we wanted to get, you shouldn't have a different experience depending on what product you buy or deliver. Right. And that just naturally happens when they're, separated, but together. The whole goal was build a customer organization, build a much more functional organization around the customer experience versus your traditional, more product pillar type approach.
Yeah, and I would just agree with all of that. When we brought the companies together that ultimately formed FinThrive, there were very different customer experiences. Those customers were used to very different channels to engage with us, and to just to how we worked together was very different across those different products. And so we needed a enterprise scale customer experience program that would support us on rapid iteration so that we could bring all of these experiences to a level set and then improve them across the board for all of those different products. And we've seen that in the numbers that we capture internally, but also in external numbers like our class score numbers. We've seen that across the board perpetual improvement.
Yeah, if you mentioned the class score again, I got to ask, what has been the improvement in your class scores?
Well, there's 9. So portfolio wide, we're about a 7 to 8 point overall improvement, but the rankings is really where the proof is in the pudding. We had some products that were top of the rankings as we came together, but now all of our products are number 1 or number 2 in class rankings. So we've managed to differentiate ourselves through the customer experiences that classes recording and capturing. And so we're very excited about that. But we see opportunity to get even better. There is always opportunity to do more for the customers. I think that Something that I've loved about working at FinThrive is that it feels like it is just in our DNA that we are going to win on customer experience and customer outcomes. That is the underlying hypothesis or driving force that pushes all of our strategy forward.
So, Brad, let me start with you with this question, then I'll go to you, Jeff. But, Brad, what advice do you have for other executives who want to implement NPS 3.0 or who want to vastly improve their class rankings or just, want to have better customer satisfaction and loyalty? What advice would you give them given the journey that you've been on?
Probably three different answers to that question, Colin. So starting with NPS, though, you're either all in or it's unimportant, right? And I've seen, my own organizations, other organizations, they might do something once a year and they hang their hat on, that's our NPS. That's just your NPS that moment in time. Like, and it could change tomorrow, and so you have to have these other data points, and it can't be a hobby. It has to be top-down sponsored. I mean, we have NPS as a corporate goal, like a collective corporate goal. Not too many companies do that unless they're customer centric. Like everyone contributes to the NPS. It's not a customer success score. It's not a product score. It's an organization score. So if you're a leader that either has it or wants to, really elevate it and have it be meaningful, you have to fund it and make it a priority to everyone, not any one functional org. And then I was thinking about the rest of the questions. And when you think about class and we triangulate so much data, like in one, we all agree on this is meaningful. What data point's meaningful? Then now let's look at it. So if we're looking at the trending of, say, our class scores with our NPS, that's great. Now let's go look at the onboarding of those customers. Was it faster? Let's look at the support, stats of those customers. Are we doing better? Like, let's look at everything. So there's no just conclusion based on a data point. We constantly are reviewing everything and making sure we're placing our bets in the right spot to be most impactful.
Jeff, same question over to you. What would you recommend to other executives who are looking to implement an NPS 3.0 type program?
I think that what you'll find is that it is the data gathering is 10% of the job. It really is the follow through. It requires deep cross-functional commitment. It requires executive stakeholders that believe in architecting the best customer experience you can and delivering the best customer outcomes you can. If you have that, it takes a lot of the barriers away to implementing major change within the organization, and you'll find that you can move things forward much faster and iterate much quicker. So the first and foremost, it is executive buy-in. Our CEO is deeply invested in our customers and our customer experience, and that is probably the most helpful element that has allowed us to move forward quickly. Beyond that, it's just getting the right measures, having alignment across the organization. It's very helpful. We meet every 2 weeks to talk about our customer data, what we're doing, the initiatives that we're running, how that's going, the customers' feedback on those initiatives. So it's an ongoing, sort of perpetually evolving program. But that's the other piece, is having a really invested and bought in execution layer that's going to carry these pieces forward and do something with them. And then the last piece is communicating and transparency with your customer base. It's one thing to measure, it's a second to take action, but it's a differentiated third to be transparent with your customer base about where you are, what you're trying to do, and where you're going with that. We've brought all three of those things together, and that's really what I think has made this program work.
Something just to add to that if I were going to make a recommendation, and it's just from personal experience. So over the past 15 years, the NPS program management for me has been owned in the customer organization, not in marketing. Like a lot of companies want to just drop, it's a survey point, it's a reputation, it's a brand thing, right? And it's not. And marketing has to be heavily involved, but Jeff just, well articulated, it's what do you do with the data? And usually it's the customer organization responsible for the fastest turnaround and engagement. So when you ingrain it in those operations, there's no, that's not, hey, we have a favor, we need you to call. It's you're responsible. Customer success, it's a measure of yours. Support teams, everyone has to jump in and they do it quickly. And it tends to be a lot more fluid when it resides in the customer org.
I couldn't agree with you more. Marketing usually has enough on their plate, and getting changes made to operational things internally is usually a challenge for marketers. Let's just say that. So it's nice to see that there's a customer organization at FinThrive that's sort of taking ownership of this, and marketing is just a key part of the team rather than trying to run it.
Right.
Alan, same question for you. What advice do you have for other executives who want to implement NPS 3.0?
First of all, it's really important to invest in creating a remarkable customer experience cross-functionally. It's not just marketing or sales, it's every function involved, everything that the customer touches. Second, it's not the number of Net Promoter Score. It's not just the score. It's what you do with the input, how you act on their input, how you make changes, things you can do immediately and in the long term, and then how you communicate back to the customers you polled that you actually did something and you listen to them. Because if they don't see any change, they're not going to continue to give you input. And their input, whether it's positive or negative, whether they're a promoter, a passive, or detractor, their input is like gold. And companies that actually act on that input and demonstrate that they listened drive continuous improvement in customer experience. Also, it's really important, so companies have to act. And I would also say, financial performance is in the rearview mirror. If you really want to impact your future performance, it's a function of your net revenue retention or getting customers that are, that are in your ideal customer profile, not just getting customers, but keeping customers. And also having an advocate program and having your promoters bring you new business. If you add those things together, that's really the value of your customer base and is completely correlated with your future financial performance. So it's really important to do. And the last thing I'll say, if you look at Fred Reichheld, who started NPS 20 years ago, what he says is only about 10% of the companies really get it. There are a lot of companies playing lip service to customer satisfaction, but really understanding how you can improve it over time is critical to your future financial performance.
You worked with Alan Gonsenhauser on this project. Can you speak to me a little bit about how that collaboration worked and how it went?
I would call Alan the chief architect of what we have ultimately built here. So I think we've both articulated the problem that we were trying to solve. We were three companies coming together. We had three different customer experiences and customer bases that were just used to engaging with us in very different ways. And we needed to level set that in a way that would allow us to iterate and improve. And Alan brought NPS 3.0 to our organization. And what's excellent about Alan is that he can operate at the executive level, but he knows all the way down to the individual contributor level. He was in those meetings, reading comments, triaging them into topics and tactics with us. He was working through these are the comments that we can take immediate action on. He called that our inner loop. You're going to carve out everything you can take immediate action on, and you're going to take action on that. You're going to continue to survey those organizations and make sure that we're seeing what Brad was talking about, that overtime improvement at the individual respondent level. And then culling out the themes that we need to have a larger discussion about. He implemented that. He called that the outer loop. And he really talked us through how to bring those initiatives back to the executive level, get buy-in on a business case for systemic change, and then implement that change. So he took us through all of those pieces from the ground up. And since hit the end of that project, we've really just seen amazing results as we've continued to add listening channels and add additional data points and build that program out.
Yeah, and personal experience with Alan, his passion to the purpose was obvious from the first time I met him, and I think we geeked out for like an hour just on this topic, right? Because you have to have passion. You have to, the customer experience and the impact of what your solutions are doing, that's what you're striving for, not an NPS program, right? But when you truly believe in the NPS program the way Alan does, and is very realistic with where we were as an organization when he joined us to help, crawl, walk, run so approach. You got to get the fundamentals in place, and then you can iterate and iterate. And I would say his blueprint certainly enabled us to get there as fast as I've ever seen. Like I said, this is the most sophisticated one I've worked in, and it's because of all the contributors and everyone with their experience. But I think it's everyone with their passion and accountability to having a business impact with our customers.
One other thing I would say that was helpful from a marketing standpoint with Alan was I know that he works across industries, but he has an incredibly deep understanding of healthcare and healthcare technology in particular. And so sometimes in healthcare, it's a benefit to have somebody that's one of us that understands our customers, their pain points, this world. And Alan speaks healthcare, knows healthcare, so he fit right in immediately.
So, Alan, reverse question for you. What was it like collaborating with Jeff and Brad on this project?
Oh, they were awesome. It was really wonderful. They were committed. They took my input. They let me run with the program and really help them. There was a huge level of trust, and we were all jointly passionate about improving the customer experience. So they let me lead the teams and really get very involved, not only in the strategy, but the tactics as well. And it had a wonderful result in terms of their customer satisfaction performance, their customer experience, which is what we all wanted.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for being on the program today. You've shared a lot of great, wonderful information. Where can people go to learn more about FinThrive?
FinThrive.com.
Alan, you've shared a lot of great information. Where can people go to connect with you and learn more about demand revenue?
Sure. I'm not going to ask people to spell my last name. I know it's difficult. So my website is demandrevenue.com, just how it sounds. And you could email me at ag@demandrevenue.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being here. We enjoyed having you on the program. Hope both of you have a great rest of your day.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. And if you need to start a program, call Alan.
For sure. Thank you, Colin.
Thanks, Alan. All right, thanks, Colin.
My pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me, Colin.
Wow. I really enjoyed that conversation with Brad, Jeff, and Alan. There was just so much to unpack there. I really loved how the team at FinThrive was able to tie improvements in their customer service, which of course they measured by NPS, to an improvement in their class ranking. That to me is a very clear marketing ROI. I also loved all the little things that the team worked on together to operationalize all that NPS data that they were collecting. And hey, if you enjoyed this interview, please like and subscribe. Also, head on over to Swaay.Health, that's Swaay with 2 A's, .health, where you'll find more great content like this. I'm Colin Hung. Thanks for being here, and I'll catch you on the next episode.